Sunday, we took a trip to Powder Mountain, which is arguably one of the hidden gems of the Utah ski scene. Powder is not on Epic or Icon, and it's not as well known as the 7 other resorts in the region that are considered to be destinations. So naturally, we had to go check it out. In this video, we'll go through our day at Powder Mountain, as well as some of the key takeaways we had about the experience from our time there. Powder limits its ticket sales, and the effects from this were immediately apparent. A storm had rolled in a couple days before this trip, but because there were so few people on the mountain, even though it was a weekend, the Powder was still almost untouched. There were only a few tracks off a lot of these trails, even the ones directly off the lifts. South and east facing snow was a little crusty, but north facing zones were super prime, and the Powder just kept on coming. On a day when Alta and Snowbird had probably been completely skied off, Powder still had the goods. Line after line was epic and untouched, but then, disaster. A storm started rolling in, but it wasn't the type of storm you'd want from a ski resort. It was a lightning storm. Just after getting to the bottom of the village lift, the lift shut down for lightning hold, so everyone was stuck there with no reopening in sight. But wait a second, can't you just ski to the bottom? Well, it turns out that Powder Mountain is an upside-down mountain, so all of its lodges and parking are at the top. So this means Powder's chairs start in no ski-out zones, and with the village lift fitting that bill, we had to be rescued out of there. But even with the lightning hold, the storm was bringing new snow. So given we were going to be waiting a while anyway, a couple of us decided to do a quick little hike and hit up some of the fresh powder. It wasn't easy, but it was certainly better than waiting. We hiked up a couple of towers or so, and then we traversed over and hit some tempting aspen trees. That snow was coming down fast, and we got some really nice powder turns in there. Even after those earlier runs, the snow was easily the best we skied all day. So finally a snowcat arrived, and with it brought both some good news and some bad news. The good news, nearly every lift at the resort was about to have their lightning hold lifted. The bad news, ours wasn't one of them, and the cat could only fit about half of us, meaning that the rest of us would have to wait another 20 or so minutes to be rescued. So the snowcat came back for a second trip and the rest of us got on. However, the inside only had enough seating for 18, and since they didn't want to do another trip, they decided to shove everyone in. So that meant a situation where it was standing room only, and some of us were holding on to each other for dear life. Some real bonding happened in that snowcat. So we got to the top and they dropped us off, but we weren't at the resort. Instead, we were on a public road, and we had to wait for a bus to get back to the rest of the resort. Luckily, the bus did come pretty quickly. The other lifts were back up spinning, and the clock was ticking. Were we going to be able to make it to the rest of the mountain? We didn't know yet. So we got off the bus with 3 minutes to spare to catch the last gate down to the Paradise lift. It was time to book it. But suddenly, disaster struck again. After they all reopened while we were stranded at the village lift, we got the letdown of an announcement that the lightning hold was back on for the entire resort and Powder Mountain was now fully closed for the day. So unfortunately, that meant we missed about half the resort, including most of its lower mountain areas. We were hoping to hit a couple more of Powder's untouched trees, but we had to settle for a little bit of fresh powder on the green to get back to the parking lot. But after that roller coaster of the day, it was honestly just good to get out of there. Throughout the day, we had a couple of other key takeaways about Powder. The lifts were definitely on the slower side, with Hidden Lake being the only detachable at the whole resort. The lack of crowds meant every chair was ski on, but for such a massive mountain, the speed of the rides definitely wore you down. That being said, Hidden Lake did service most of the groomers we found, and we felt that it had enough to keep those who wouldn't want to deal with slow lifts happy. The resort's aspen trees really stood out. Each venture into the glades yielded soft, floaty powder within a widely spaced, uniquely open tree footprint. But because the resort was so empty, it was possible to carve both in and out of the trees and get equal amounts of high-quality powder. And finally, there were a number of condo developments around the resort, including several that were still being built. But unlike those at many other Utah competitors, these were all pretty modest and seemed to go well with the resort atmosphere. Some of the trails crossed over roads, but once you got to lower mountain areas, the upside-down resort felt much more removed from the outside world. So that was day one at Powder Mountain. What a monumental territory to explore. It was a shame that we didn't get to experience it to its full potential, but we will be back, and we hope to hit more of those untouched lines next time. Powder is truly one of the most unique resorts we've ever visited, and we can't wait to go back to gather enough insights for a full review.